Hi, I'm Jasmine, and welcome to Pushing Over the Box. I'm a 13-year-old ballerina who's curious about what it really takes to dance at the highest level. Here, I ask inspiring dancers about their routines, their mindsets, and how they break boundaries. Let's go! Welcome back to Pushing Over the Box. I'm so excited because today I'll be talking to one of my absolute favorite dancers, Skylar Brandt. She's a principal dancer at American Ballet Theatre and has performed some of the most amazing roles like Giselle, Swan Lake, and Don Quixote. She's known for being super hardworking, expressive, and just an amazing dancer overall. So let's get into it. When did you start dancing and what made you fall in love with ballet?
I started dancing when I was about 6 years old, and then I really fell in love with it when I was about 8 years old. And I remember at the time I grew up before there were phones and computers, and so I was for fun, I was actually playing dress up and dancing around to music at home. And then it wasn't until I went to see a performance at American Ballet Theatre where I saw grown-ups doing the same thing, but, on a much bigger scale. They had orchestra, they had the most beautiful costumes I'd ever seen, they had sets. It was like they had this totally immersive world that I thought, "Oh my gosh, I can do this as a professional, like, when I grow up." So, it was when I was 8 years old that I decided I wanna become a ballerina because I wanna be on that stage telling those stories in the same way that the ABT dancers are.
Who inspired you most when you were growing up?
Hmm. Well, I definitely drew a lot of inspiration from my teachers, my first teachers, Diana White, Valentina Kozlova. It was like because they were demonstrating to me, I took a lot from them visually, and I really tried to copy and mimic them. But I also really idolized the people that were performing with ABT at the time. So for me, those were it was like Angel Correa, Irina Dvorovenko, Marcelo Gomez, Nina Anashvili. Those dancers were so particularly exciting to me to watch. So I really, I was just hooked on that energy that they had, the artistry that they put out. Yeah.
When you were a kid, were you just doing ballet or were you doing other types of dance as well?
You know what? I started out doing all kinds of dance. I did jazz and a little bit of tap, some hip hop, but then I really kind of focused mostly on ballet. And then when I was 12 years old and I was attending ABT school at the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis School, they were offering everything. They were offering character and jazz class, modern class. So then I got to take more styles again. But my sister, my oldest sister, was a hip hop dancer for the Knicks basketball team.
Oh,
So I
that's
always really loved hip hop. It's not that I'm very good at it, but I always that's probably the other style of dance that I most enjoy.
Was there ever a time when people or yourself doubted that you'd become a professional, and how did you stay motivated?
Mm. I never doubted that I never doubted my path becoming a professional. In fact, I was very certain that I would become a professional, and I think that's largely why I was successful in achieving my dreams because I kind of had a very, like, narrow mind, and I was so set on what I was doing that I didn't give myself the option not to succeed. But were there days when I felt really tired and I kind of maybe wanted to give up? Probably, yeah. I had those days. They didn't last very long, but certainly I experienced moments of burnout, and then I would, you know, the next day wake up a new person and be excited to go to class again. That still happens to me.
Did ballet come easily to you, or did you struggle with things?
You know what? I think it came easily to me in the sense that I could really relate to the storytelling part of stuff, and I felt very creative in that way. I think I had a lot of natural gifts, but then a lot of natural weaknesses all at the same time. So I had to work, of course, really hard on the things that I was lacking, like certain flexibility, the my lines of my feet, my adagio quality, my jumping ability. So while I feel that I was made for it in a way, even just mentally, I was so invested and I was so passionate about it. There were definitely things that a lot of other dancers my age had that I didn't, that I needed to really work almost twice as hard as everyone else to improve.
Did you do anything outside of the studio that you think really helped you?
Hmm. I think when I was a kid, I think for me continuing to go to see performances was really helpful because it continued to inspire me and motivate me. It was like I would go and watch a performance and then remember that, "Oh, yeah, I wanna be on that stage. I wanna do that kind of, you know, job." So that was helpful. Aside from that, I mean, I did take sometimes some gyrotonics, sometimes Pilates, but I didn't actually understand the full value of cross-training until I really became an adult, which I think is okay because I think sometimes it's like kids need to be kids too, just to feel like a
Mm.
well-rounded person. I'm not necessarily a big proponent of overloading a child's schedule because then they have no time to decompress, and then a real burnout could happen. It could risk somebody just kind of falling out of love with what they're doing. But now I cross training and I still to this day, like I would take private lessons as a kid, and I still to this day take private lessons as a professional dancer.
Were your parents always supportive of ballet being a career?
Yeah, they actually were. It's was so lucky for me that they, um, believed in me. I think they saw my potential. They saw that this was something that they should continue to nurture and support. And yeah, and I was very fortunate. Even I had 2 older sisters, and they're quite a bit older than I am. So by the time that I was starting to pivot and maybe like need to be commute into the city and things were getting more serious, they were actually already out of the house and in college. So it was weird because I almost feel like I grew up like an only child at a certain point. It's sort of the timing was lucky, you know, when I was born was it left me with parents that were kind of more free to um help foster my dreams.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How did you balance school with rehearsals and classes, and did you stay in in-person school throughout your whole
Yeah, so I started by going to like a normal academic school, and I remember I had a lot of trouble because I think I was a little bit of a weird kid. Like I was like ballet obsessed and I was, it was all I could talk about or think about. I was, always in my head, like dreaming, just dreaming about becoming a ballerina. So I didn't really relate to other kids my age. And I mean, you're a dancer, so you know what it is to be committed to something that's so difficult. It asks so much of us. We have to work so hard, be so diligent, and from a really young age. So it's like forms you into this more mature version of maybe, how another child might be. And so I got bullied a lot in school because of it, but I didn't let it tear me down. If anything, I kind of looked at those experiences as being helpful and making me stronger and making me grow a thicker skin, which I think is really necessary if you're going to try to pursue ballet because all we do is receive criticism all the time if we're not already critiquing ourselves. So I eventually switched to a different school called the Professional Children's School, which is in Manhattan.
Mhm.
And it was a school that catered to professional and pre-professional children. So I was now in class with other kids who were pursuing their own dreams of becoming actors or equestrians or models or dancers as well, musicians, all different industries, but we could all relate on the common fact that we were trying to go pro in something. It wasn't until I was asked to join ABT's junior company. At the time it was called ABT2, now it's called ABT Studio Company, when I was 16, and that would entail me having my first full-time job, getting to tour around the world. And at that point I realized, well, even the professional children's school might not be able to work with my schedule and accommodate, my needs. So that's when I switched to homeschooling. And my parents weren't thrilled about this idea at first because they didn't want my level of education to go down. They were like, "We're not going to teach you. You're not going to teach yourself." But their compromise was that they got me tutors to come in and enrich my learning. And it was honestly great to be homeschooled because I could go at my own pace. I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I don't have the pressures of needing to complete homework if I don't have time. If I'm away in Spain on my first international tour without my family, or, I can actually like fully enjoy it. I don't need to worry about school. And then at the same time, if I had a free summer, then all of a sudden I could try to get a bunch of credits done at one time. So it sort of gave me more flexibility, which I which I enjoyed. So I kind of done it all as far as schooling goes. It was hard to balance the academics, especially when I was in normal school, because
Mhm.
at that point you have deadlines, but I think the homeschooling was kind of more helpful to me. Yeah.
And since you joined ABT when you were so young, what was it like?
It was so, it was really weird because all of a sudden my friends, it was like ABT company, the main company ranged from 17-year-old me to people in their 40s with 3 kids already. So it was really like, I mean, it was so cool because I was exposed to so many different kinds of people who also came from different walks of life. There were so many international dancers, but I felt that even given that kind of environment where you could feel it's a little scary, you could feel a little bit out of place, a little bit intimidated, people were really welcoming and warm. So it kind of I felt like even, the older dancers took me under their wings. And then I had friends already who had joined the company maybe a year or 2 before I had from school. So that felt like a comfortable, like a safety net that I was like, "Okay, I already have friends," and then I could make new friends. But there's this weird kind of time that you go through when you join a company, especially at a young age, where you're just trying to like figure yourself out, where you fit in, and also trying to be super respectful to everyone. So it's like probably for a few months, maybe I didn't even open my mouth and speak to anybody. I just was quietly doing my work in the back and trying to be, a team player and go unnoticed. But then you find your groove.
Since you've been through all of the ranks, what would you say is your favorite part about each one?
Mm. I think as a Corps de Ballet member, it was in a way, it was the most rewarding time because you're on stage the most. It's like if there were 8 shows a week, I was in 8 shows. If there were 8 weeks worth of shows, I was in 8 weeks worth of shows. So it's like that feeling that you have this huge responsibility to help carry the ballet, but also honestly without the pressures of being the principal dancer on stage, which is also kind of nice because then you can sort of enjoy, what's going on around you a little bit more. There's such a feeling of, like, sisterhood, especially in the female corps de ballet, because you're working so hard, like something like Swan Lake Corps or Bayadere Shades Corps, it's like it's very intense, but you feel like everybody's supporting each other and you're all there for one reason. So I really loved that time. I was exhausted. I was basically on the verge of collapse because I was doing so much work and also being a short person. I was always placed in the front. So it's not even like, I mean, no one should ever take things easily anyway on stage, and it wouldn't be in my nature even if I was 6 feet tall and I was in the way back of the line, but there was no way to hide anything. I always had to be on 100% of the time. But I really felt like it was an honor to be like a line leader. I enjoyed that part of my job. But then it's hard because you start to get opportunities to do soloist and principal stuff. And you're like, really want to make that count because you don't want to blow your chance to make an impression. So it was a challenging time, but really rewarding.
Uh-huh.
Then as a soloist, I think that was actually my least favorite time because all of a sudden I went from being on stage all the time to being on stage maybe like a couple times a week. And that change was very hard to calibrate because I kind of felt like, what's my purpose? And not that soloist roles aren't important, but soloist role could be kind of like the more abstract part of any given ballet, like Peasant Pas or Pas de Trois. It's like you play the prince's friends or the main village,
Yeah.
dancer, what have you. So it's like you're serving the purpose of dancing something beautiful, but you're not really that important to the story maybe. And yet you kind of feel weirdly out of shape only being on stage a couple times a week. But then you have the pressure of actually performing at your highest level as well because you're doing a solo, but then you're not the main character. So it's kind of like for me, it felt like a weird limbo position to be at. And then principal dancer, I think it's the most fun because you get to go on stage and be the main part. And even though there's so much more kind of like pressure and stress probably that comes along with being a principal dancer, it pays off in that you have also more freedom to be who you really want to be on stage because it's people paid tickets to see you and they want to see what you're going to do with the part. Because, there could be 8 shows of Swan Lake a week. And so people go back 8 different times because it's 8 different casts. And so the fun part is to be able to trust yourself and make your own statement, be like, well, this is what I'm going to do with it. And that's really, you don't have as many restrictions around you when you get to be the principal.
And how did you feel the day that you were promoted to principal dancer?
It was kind of mixed, and I'll tell you why. Before I was promoted to principal, the pandemic had happened. So I was promoted in September 2020, which was, first of all, really surprising because we were in a pandemic. So I was like, are we even going to have a ballet company after this? What are the financial losses going to be? Are we going to survive this? Are we ever going to come out of this? So for me, I was really not expecting it, but I was also not expecting a promotion because a few months prior, I had had a conversation with my director at the time, and it kind of seemed like there might be some dancers who were being pushed ahead of me, and dancers not just of my generation, but dancers younger than I was. So I kind of felt like, okay, I'm taking a little bit of a backseat to other super talented and deserving members of the company, but am I okay with that? And at the time, I realized I was not okay with that. I was sort of done waiting. So I decided to start to audition other places. And in a way, even though ABT was always my dream company, I was sort of excited for a change. I was like, okay, I'll move to a different country. I'll learn a new language. I'll start a new life. Nobody's going to know me anywhere. I'll get to dance all the roles that I really want to dance. I'll get to be a principal dancer sooner than later. It was sounded really appealing. So, in a way, I had kind of mentally checked out of being an ABT and had moved on in my heart and in my mind, even though I didn't have another job yet because we were in a pandemic and all the companies responded and they said, well, we're in a pandemic, so we're not hiring right now. And I was like, I know. I just, just keep me in the back of your mind for when the world opens up again. And then when the promotion happened, all of a sudden I was flooded with so much emotion because it was my exact childhood dream, the one that I had when I was 8 years old. I had accomplished it, but at the same time, I had already kind of mentally left the building. So in a way, it was both the most beautiful moment ever and also confusing for me. And, of course I was overjoyed and I was like, well, I guess I'm not moving. I guess I'm not, I've arrived at where I wanted to go. It's just there was something bittersweet about how I got there, I think. And I think the fact that my director kind of took me seriously when I told him, hey, I think I'm going to go audition elsewhere. Like he heard me loud and clear because I really meant it. And so, had I wished that I didn't need to kind of make a threat, it wasn't a threat because it was just my course of action, but do I wish that I didn't have to get to that point to be promoted? Yes. But was it still a beautiful moment? Yes.
I know that you work with Irina Dvorovenko, which I do too because her mom teaches at my ballet school. How do you think that training with her has impacted your dancing?
Oh, I think I have everything that I am today is thanks to her and to her husband Maxime. Again, I think had great training as a kid. I trained with so many different people as a kid as well. I think I had a really unique path in that way too. I didn't go to one school. I wasn't studying one style of dance. I studied Balanchine and Vaganova and Cicchetti, and so I was really exposed to a lot of things, but I feel like working with Irina and Max has helped me to hone my technique and my approach a little bit and sort of shape me in a way that I want to look in the direction that I want to go. I've always most loved the Russian ballet, so for me, their training is it's that, and it's very complementary to how I wanna be perceived on stage, so I think they've helped me to refine me and my dancing, but also they've opened up doors to help me discover more of myself and what I wanna be. So they're wonderful because they don't say there's only one way to do something, they give me many, many options, and they really try to help mold and shape me in a way that's best for me individually. And that might not be the same for another student of theirs. And so I think that's the best quality you can have in a teacher, is someone who's going to try to pull the best out of you instead of make you into a carbon copy of the next person, or even make you into how they danced. But I so value and appreciate working with them as well, because they were also principal dancers at ABT. So they're doing all of the rep that I'm doing now, either again or as a debut they have done. So it's like wonderful to have their insight and experience as I continue to build my repertoire and develop more and more roles.
I know that you've danced in like an insane amount of iconic ballets. Which one do you think has challenged you the most?
Swan Lake, hands down. Swan Lake has always been a struggle for me because I think, to start off, I don't see myself like a swan. So it's really hard to do something in a convincing way when you don't even believe in it in yourself. And I also have never loved watching Swan Lake to begin with. That also might be why I don't connect to it very well. I think there are beautiful moments in Swan Lake, but there are other ballets that I just kind of love more. And as the female lead in Swan Lake, you're playing part swan, part woman. It's sort of confusing, and it's a bit of a challenge to figure out how to balance those two aspects of playing Odette Odile. I can say that I'm falling more in love with it as we go, as I have more experience, but it is, even for the dancers that really take to it easily and who feel natural in it's a struggle even for them, because Swan Lake is one of just the hardest ballets to do well. So I know I'm not alone. I just think I have a more severe and drastic feeling about it than even other dancers. It's like, for most, female ballerinas, they're like, oh, the dream is to dance Swan Lake. For me, it was never the dream. Still, now I'm like, okay, I'll work on it. And I do feel motivated every year we return to it, because we perform it every year. It's like our staple in our repertoire. I do feel inspired to tackle it, but it's very stressful because it's very hard to do it well and to get it right. And I'm really self-critical.
Do you think you have a favorite ballet?
Yeah, I think of favorites to watch probably would be like Don Q and Romeo and Juliet. Favorite to dance would be Giselle. And then I have so many favorite contemporary ballets that I really love, like In the Upper Room by Twyla Tharp, Rite of Spring by Pina Bausch. And that list could go on and on. I love Ohad Naharin, Works, Crystal Pipe. It just, Alvin Ailey, like watching Revelations is so amazing every time. So, but of the classical ballets, I think that's my answer. Yeah,
Do you prefer contemporary or classical?
classical for sure. Yeah, I'm like definitely in my heart, in my blood, like in my early training, I'm definitely a classical girl.
Do you have any backstage rituals or pre-show traditions that you do?
Well, I always, of course, try to do a really proper warm up. You know, I guess the obvious stuff, making sure you take class before the show, hair and makeup. But as far as rituals, like anything that's sort of unique to me, I don't really have any. And it's because I don't want to feel like I'm relying on anything before show for it to go well. Mentally, I'm sort of like, I am superstitious about being superstitious. So I try to treat every performance day like a normal day. It helps actually to keep me in a more relaxed headspace so that I'm not stressing. And I think that the introduction of rituals and, things I need to do on the day of the show would only make me more anxious and nervous.
What's one thing about being a professional dancer that people might not expect?
I think people, they understand how hard we work, but I think they don't understand necessarily, or wouldn't have any way of knowing how much as dancers we have to invest in ourselves. Of course, dancing for a major ballet company, we have so much that's offered to us, but even with all of our resources, it's still, for me personally, in my own level of comfort, not enough time to prepare something properly to go on stage. So I spend a lot of time on my days off continuing to work. And I think people don't know that how much extra goes into putting something on stage.
What helps you stay positive when things get competitive or stressful?
Yeah, gosh, that's something that I think probably every dancer has contended with from even just from childhood is just like feelings of jealousy or discouragement. Again, we're in such a highly critical job. Like, I mean, if it's not enough that we criticize ourselves all the time, that we're hard on ourselves, we have everybody at the front of the room, teachers, staff, rehearsal directors, bosses, who are also going to be demanding of us. But I think both taking critique as kind of like your window to growth is kind of the perspective I like to adopt. So like especially as being a kid, if a teacher was on me a lot with a lot of feedback and corrections, instead of feeling bad about it, I looked at it as, oh, they care about me and they want me to do better and they see my potential, so that's why they're pushing me. And just even that kind of subtle shift in mentality can really help to endure so much of that feedback and correction. Of course, growing up even more so, and even still as a professional, like I still get jealous of people. But I think that over time, you come to acknowledge and appreciate your own strengths and acknowledge and appreciate other people's strengths and realize that those are their strengths and they might not be your strengths, but that you have something else to offer. It's kind of like you need to almost pass the time to to become more and more confident, have more self-esteem. So I certainly look to my colleagues as beacons of inspiration because you can learn so much just from looking at someone else. So I try to again turn it into a positive experience when someone is doing something really well, instead of just being like, "Oh, why can't I do that?" I might say, how can I um apply some of what they're doing to what I'm doing, but also I try to sometimes remove myself and sort of become like someone on the outside. And so when someone is excelling and is dancing really beautifully, I just try to appreciate it for what it is and not think about myself at all. I think it gets trickier when you have certain goals and aspirations. Like maybe if I want to do the same part and someone else gets cast, like that's, an age old story. We all go through it from student to professional. It can be difficult, but at the end of the day, um, taking responsibility for like why maybe someone else got cast over you is important to, I guess, understand and recognize. And sometimes it's because someone's better suited for the role and it just is what it is. And we either need to accept that or just work harder on the role to get cast the next time. And sometimes it's more political. Sometimes it's, the director just simply likes another dancer better for whatever reason. Sometimes in school, it's because a mom complained, so it's just, you never know what goes on behind closed doors. But what we can do is just speak up for ourselves and make our own desires and wishes heard. And at least that way you have no regrets. It's not like I should have said something, maybe I would have gotten cast. But it's very hard as dancers to find our voices to say those things. We're silent all the time and we're really good at following a direction and not always good at giving directions. So I think it's another muscle that we need to exercise as dancers.
And have you ever messed up on stage, and how do you deal with that?
Oh my god, so many times. I've been dropped on stage, I've slipped and fallen on stage, I've fallen out of stuff on stage, and I do think that, like, part of what makes a professional is honestly the ways in which they recover from those instances. I could probably count on, like, 0 hands how many times that I felt like a performance of mine was perfect. So, I spend all of my time trying to save a step, recover, and I think it's, like, how you approach those moments that can make one professional better than the next, and also that comes with experience and age um, and that kind of thing, but I've definitely had it happen. Sometimes it can actually be helpful to the rest of the performance. Like I've had moments where I've either slipped or I've fallen like towards the beginning of something, and it immediately makes me exhale because I'm like, well, it doesn't get worse than falling on stage. So now it just kind of like takes the pressure off. And then in a way, you get to enjoy the rest of the show a little bit more and things go more easily. I mean, I never like that feeling of messing up. I definitely, although I try to be kind to myself and give myself a pass, things are accidents. It's like we're not trying to mess up. It's just stuff happens and it's disappointing. But, you just try to move past it as best you can and laugh it off if you can. I think it's always better to be able to laugh at yourself and also know that it happens to everyone. Like I always think about how, even Barishnikov had off shows. So if he's had off shows, then I can have off shows.
Do you have a favorite and least favorite costume?
What an interesting question. Yeah. I think actually, in a way, and this is going to sound bad because we're so lucky to have the most gorgeous costumes, but it's almost like all the costumes that we have at the ballet company are my least favorite costumes because they weren't made for me, for my body. There are different settings of hooks, and our wardrobe people can try to finesse the costumes as best they can. And honestly, our wardrobe people are incredible and willing and nice about it. Like, if I can go to the wardrobe person and say, "Hey, the proportions are really off here. Um, I feel like this doesn't fit me well." Even if it fits, like it closes, it doesn't mean that always the costume is flattering towards the dancer to the dancer. So I feel like I'm always trying to work with what we're given because we have to wear, in most cases, we have to wear the costume that comes with the production we're performing. But my favorite costumes are the ones that I got made for myself. So, a lot of dancers will invest in making their own costumes so that they have something to wear either on outside gigs or sometimes I'll wear my own costume even when I'm performing with ABT, like wearing my own Giselle costumes for Act One and Act Two. I really love the way they fit because I gave my exact measurements and asked for what I wanted and the cuts I wanted and the colors I wanted. So those become my favorite, my preferred costumes, even over the gorgeous, exquisite costumes that we have at ABT.
Have you ever had to recover from an injury, and what was that like for you?
Yes, I have had to recover from an injury. It was a huge learning experience for me. I'm a person who thankfully has not been injured very much at all in my dance career. So I've been lucky, really lucky. But because I haven't had much experience with injury, fortunately, when I did get injured, I didn't know how to react. And what I did was I went into denial and I tried to dance through it, and it was a big mistake. So I think that, I needed to learn the hard way a little bit. And I think most dancers do because we're so used to being in pain or being in uncomfortable situations. I mean, ballet is not all natural for the body. So we're constantly doing things that aren't really quote unquote good for our bodies anyway. So it's easy for us when we do actually face a serious injury to just try to push through it. Also, I think we have um, this anxiety that like we're going to lose time, especially as a kid. You're like, I'm training, I want to join a company by the time I'm 18. If you lose a week or a month or a year, it feels like the end of the world because you're like, oh my god, I'm going to fall behind, and already dance career is short. I can't dance into my 60s or 70s. It's not like we have an expiration date on what we do, so it's hard for us to kind of like listen to our bodies all the time and take care of ourselves in the way that we need to. But for me, I remember being in a lot of pain and trying to go to work. I had a back injury. I had a herniated disc in my lumbar spine. And it started out like it was okay. It just kind of felt sore for a couple weeks. And then one morning I woke up and I couldn't even like lower my head or put on my shoes or my socks without feeling enormous pain from like the base of my spine to the top of my neck. So instead of listening to that extreme warning signal that my body was sending me, I tried to go to work and dance and take class and warm up for my day. And it was like, what are you crazy? Like, this is not happening. And then I went to the physical therapist who checked me out. She was very surprised to see me there in the PT room because, again, in all my career, I've almost had no injuries. So there was no reason for me to go get worked on. And she was like, you need to go see the doctor today. And that's when I found after an MRI that I had a herniated disc. But what I will also say is that I felt like I was able to grow a lot as a person while I was injured. I really took that time to enjoy being off, to be honest, because as you know, if you're dancing at a high level, you're trying to pursue something. I mean, I basically haven't had a break since I was 8 years old because you don't just like give it up for several months or a year or something. There's no time off, like real time off. So the injury forced me to take time off, and I knew I need to recover from this, and my recovery means not doing anything. So if I need to put in the time to heal, I might as well enjoy that time instead of being sad about the fact or having FOMO saying like I'm missing out or other people are getting to perform or do parts that I want to do or I missed my chance to perform this in our upcoming tour because I got injured. Like instead of being upset about it, I just said to myself, well, okay, let's enjoy the time. And I really loved it. I don't want to say I loved being injured, but I loved being injured. I was like, this is great. I'm having fun. I'm seeing my family. I'm doing more activities on the outside that I wouldn't otherwise have the gift of time to do unless I was forced to take that time off.
I know that you cut out most of your shank, which I also do. How did you discover that, and how do you think that that helps you?
Yes. So I don't have very flexible feet. So I kind of need all the help I can get to push over my box. I remember I think I used to 3/4 my shank. And then a friend of mine who danced at the Royal Ballet, she danced at ABT. She had like she was older than me and had more experience. She said to me, why don't you cut out more of it? And that's what she was doing with her shoes. So then I tried and I was like, oh, I have a lot more pliability in my point shoe, and I really liked the way it felt. So that's how I came to start cutting out half my shank was because an older dancer gave me that pro tip, and I'm really grateful to her for that. And amazingly, even despite cutting out so much of my shoes still last me forever. I'm in a way, I'm even though I wish I had more beautiful feet, I also can appreciate the upsides of having less flexible feet.
What does a normal day look like for you when you're rehearsing?
So when we're rehearsing, I usually, I try to get to the studio a little bit early, so I can stretch before class, and then we take basically an hour and 15-minute long class before we go into rehearsals, which usually from like 11:30 to 6:30 at night. Sometimes I have an hour break for lunch. Sometimes I have no breaks. Sometimes I will have a massive 4-hour chunk in my day. It just depends on the repertoire that we're rehearsing. And then, so that's usually Tuesdays through Saturdays. Then on Mondays, I do a lot more. I'll go take class. I'll take a private lesson with Irina and Max. Then I'll go to Pilates just for maintenance of my body. And then I'll usually get a massage at the end of the day. So it's a little bit more jam packed, but it's because I design it to be that way. When we're in performance season, we kind of do all of the above, plus we have a show at the end of the day. So it can be sometimes more strenuous, but if you're off in the evening show, then it's kind of like a little treat. You get to go home a little bit early and just relax in the evening.
Do you have any hobbies or favorite things to do outside of ballet?
Right now, currently, my favorite thing to do is play cards. I'm I love I play cards with my fiance all the time. It's like the first thing we do even when we wake up in the morning or at the end of the night. Not that it's so much of a hobby, but it's really fun, like my fun way to decompress. Aside from that, I'm trying to learn Russian on the side because my fiance is Russian, so I want to be able to learn the language better so I can speak to his family. I like to read and then watch just like sometimes junk TV shows because that's also an important way for me to relax at the end of the day. If eating was a hobby, then definitely eating. Love, love, love food, love going out for dinners with my friends and family. And other than that, I'm basically waiting to retire till I can go skiing again, which I'm really, really excited to do at some point.
Have you ever explored teaching or choreographing?
Yes, I actually have done both. Teaching, I love to do. It kind of something I started doing over the pandemic online, and then I found that I really enjoyed it. And I still have some students from pandemic times. Like it's actually it's kind of a crazy thing. I feel like, I've seen some of my students grow up almost in front of my eyes because it's been 5 years already that I've been teaching them. So I love to teach. It's definitely something that I want to pursue even after I've retired from dancing. I think I want to teach more and more full time, even though I teach weekly anyway, as it is. And then choreographing, I have choreographed. It's not something that I'm that drawn to because I don't feel like a really super creative person in general. Even in my own dancing, I really like it when choreographers or teachers or my coaches tell me what to do as opposed to me necessarily inventing anything myself. I'm really good at following orders, and I also place a lot more trust in other people to tell me what they want to see from me than I do in myself. So I think choreographing kind of falls in that category of just not being having the patience or not being creative enough to be like, oh, what could I make myself? That said, I recently did a couple of performances, produced my own performances with my fiance. He's a pianist, classical pianist, and so I he would play piano and I would dance. And because of the limitations of the stage and of the way that the program is oriented, which is just the two of us, it's like I'm not doing pas de deux, for example. I'm like performing solos, and there are only a certain number of solos that you can really perform in the space that we have, which is on the smaller scale because it's a concert hall, it's not a dance venue. Also, even just the floor, it's not a sprung floor. So it's like I don't want to my rep that I have to choose from becomes really limited. So I decided to choreograph a couple of pieces that would kind of fit the requirements of performing with him and also, the pieces that he's choosing repertoire wise. So I have choreographed and have enjoyed it for that purpose, and I'm willing to do it for that purpose. But otherwise, I don't have any major itches to choreograph anything else, only when I really need to.
And last question, what advice would you give your 13-year-old self?
I think I would have told myself at 13 um, that it's okay not to be perfect at everything. I think when we're in school, it's like our teachers feed us really excellent information that you could find in the textbook of dance, which is a lot of certain things that need to be there to create a strong foundation for a future as a professional. But what I ended up learning as a professional is that I need to kind of like tear a lot of those rules down to be a good artist. And so I wish I had known as a kid that, yes, learn the rules, but know that someday you're going to break them. And I think it would have taken some pressure off of me to try to be so perfect in my ballet technique, knowing that there's so many correct ways to dance.
Thank you so much for being here. This was amazing, and I learned so much.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thanks so much for having me on. Your questions are so great. I'm really
Thank
excited to
you.
have this conversation.
Thank you.